We live in a world where headlines are written to grab attention rather than to clarify. Spin, selective framing, and deliberate distraction often cloud the truth, leaving people polarised, misinformed, or simply exhausted by the noise.
Fact and Friction was born out of the need to slow down, strip away the theatre of contemporary media, and examine what's really going on when narratives clash.
Every episode will dive into the points of tension, the friction, where fact meets spin, where evidence collides with ideology, and where competing truths are put to the test.
Our purpose isn't to lecture or to preach. Often it won't even get to the ground truth, but to unpick, challenge, and illuminate.
So we aim to help you, our listener, to see through the haze of modern media, offering you clarity without oversimplification, and provide a balanced perspective that offers every side of the argument. So let's get to the episode. Here we go, episode 1, the attention engine. Now, in this episode, I think we need to dive into the first part of the algorithm, the machine, that quietly shapes more of our day than almost anything else, the attention engine. Now, in simple terms, it's the system behind our feeds, our notifications, and that gentle tug to just check one more thing, just stay just that little bit longer.
Yeah, this one's going to resonate with a lot of the youngsters. But let's break down how the algorithms learn what keeps you watching, and then why they're so effective at nudging your behaviour. And subtle is the right word. The subtle ways in which they influence what feels important or urgent, or something that you want to be interested, but often without you even noticing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't think we said in our first description of this whole podcast series, we're not here to generate fear or finger wagging, all social media is bad. We just want you to be aware as a listener that there are some pretty straightforward things happening here, and once you understand how the so-called attention engine works, you can start to spot these nudges. You can reclaim your focus, and by the way, a bunch of time, and make choices on your own terms.
Great. So at the end of the episode then, you'll have a clear, practical toolkit for recognising when your attention is being steered, and therefore give you some tools to actually take it back.
All right, so let's talk about the engine, Sean. Now, before we go any further, let's be absolutely clear. We're not talking about a malevolent force of nature that's trying to steer things. We're not doing that. We're simply trying to identify that there are mechanisms at play here. So, from your recent experience, listener, have you opened an app to do something, a specific thing, and then 17, 20, 25 minutes later, popped out the other end thinking about buying supplements you'd never heard of, or a new t-shirt that you think you now desperately need? Has that happened to you? It certainly has happened to me.
I would be very surprised if it hasn't happened to everybody, unless they're being economical with the truth or they're a very special type of person. Yeah. We've all done it, and that 20, 25 minutes can quickly turn into several hours.
Doom scrolling. The other example I recall from my own history of recent times is YouTube, watching YouTube and suddenly finding myself watching a man rebuild a 1982 red tractor. Why? I have no idea, but at the time it seemed like a really good idea.
But there is a point about that though, isn't there? Because actually you probably found it quite interesting, which is why you stayed on it, because that's where the doom scrolling comes in, like not interested. But how long after that, seeing it, did you remember about it and thinking, I still quite like to build a 1982 tractor? Probably not.
Yeah, but the point here is my attention was captured, and that didn't feel aggressive or malevolent. It just felt convenient, just easy to do. I just spend another 20 minutes just looking at this interesting tractor being rebuilt.
And you didn't put your phone down, you kept on looking at it, and then, what's next?
So I think the key message here for us as we step into the mechanics of the attention engine is it's not trying to make you angry necessarily, it's just trying to stop you leaving. That's what it cares about. The algorithm has one purpose. The so-called algorithm KPI, key performance indicator, is keep you engaged, keep you on the screen. Now, why is that?
And this is where it gets getting into some of the detail now, and again for the awareness. So the algorithms, they learn from almost everything you do, whether it's a pause, whether it's a click, whether you go back and have another look, whether you save something, doesn't happen often, but even hesitations, even almost fractions of a second. So if you think you're just scrolling through and you just stop and then carry on again, it will have recorded that in terms of they were slightly more interested in this than the last thing, and therefore the algorithm will start feeding something to do with that back to you.
The frightening thing is, and we'll definitely get into this in the future podcast episodes, is how much the algorithms that are working through the platforms you're using know about you specifically, how you scroll, how you pause, and then it starts to learn that a very microscopic pause is potentially another avenue. We're going to call it rabbit holing. We're not going to go there today, but it's another potential avenue that it can use to keep you on the system, keep you engaged. So I think one of the things that occurred to me, Sean, when I read about this stuff in the recent time is it really isn't personal. It's a machine, and it's been trained to find a way to keep you on the screen. And it does that by using essentially statistics. If 92.3% of the population that use this app have been engaged by this color, this approach, this headline, this topic, guess what? Everyone's going to see that at some point. It's going to be on your screen at some point.
Yeah. And the personalization, I suppose, comes in when, again, back to what we were just saying, when you interact, it doesn't see you as, Sean Corbett, you looked at a fishing video, which I do far too much, by the way. It goes, right, there's a 1 and 0 there that has taken, 1.2 seconds to look at that rather than 0.9 of a second. Therefore, in my algorithm, that's a more important thing to look at. Therefore, there needs to be more of that. And of course, it's not just on one issue or even one metric. It just keeps on amplifying that and amplifying it.
Right, now let's move on then to this amplification. So let's just retrack again. The algorithm doesn't care what you look at. It just notices that you are pausing or doing something that triggers the algorithm to pour more of that in front of you, because it's just trying to stop you leaving. That's all it's trying to do. So you interact in some way, and as we said, the interactions can be pauses, clicks, rewatches, hesitations, or indeed deeper burrowing, which we'll call rabbit holing for later. And so it's going to give you more of that. What's the outcome, Sean, with that interaction driving the system to give you more of that stuff?
So it's what we call a momentum loop.
Right.
So you've looked at something, therefore you're interested in it. So you see more of that something, therefore you're interested. So it gives you even more of that something.
Right.
And we've all been, again, the dreadful term, but it's true, the doom looping, where you look at something and think, oh, I haven't seen that before. And you accidentally or deliberately spend a bit of time on it. And then, 2 scrolls later and there's more of it. And you just find yourself looking at it even more. That's back to your tractor analogy, which I suppose, actually that's a little bit more deliberate, but there might be something really ridiculous.
Right, and I think that's the place we should go next, is that when you think about how you interact with the screen and what's on the screen, every now and again, there is an emotional quotient to something on the screen. Now, the emotion could be outrage, it could be joy, it could be laughter, it could be tears. Emotional content definitely triggers much more interaction from us as human beings.
Indeed.
Again, whether it's negative or positive, the interaction with emotion drives a great deal more pauses and clicks. And one of the reasons why headlines are often written the way they are is to generate more clicks, the so-called clickbait. So one of the things we'll come on to later in terms of, so what do I do about it, will be register, notice how a particular thing has generated a particular response, emotional response in you. Note that, and then watch what the algorithm does next. Because your reaction will tell the algorithm to do more of it. And then we go down the emotional elevation line, where it notices you've paused. It happens, by the way, to create an emotional reaction in you. It doesn't know that, but that is now what's going to reinforce the momentum loop, because now there's an emotional quotient in it. So you're now triggered, emotionally triggered, much more reinforcing. The algorithm notices the extra pause, the extra digging, and now puts you into a momentum loop that's now being catalyzed, driven by emotion. And this is where your polarization view starts to come. But we're getting well ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we are getting ahead of ourselves here. But just as you were talking there, it got me thinking, actually, how aware are we that our emotions are being changed?
Triggered,
Because you're probably sat on the sofa or lying on the sofa or whatever, Now, when it's something amusing, you're going to know that. I mean, some of the, which again we'll come on to, some of the AI generated videos of cats doing crazy things, I find them hilarious actually, but they're very, very good. You can kind of go, okay, this is being done to me, but it's amusing. But when it's it might be a political topic or something like that. I know I find myself quite consciously, but then that's the sort of person I am, getting quite cross, going, no, that's not right. But actually, am I doing that just for stuff that I know about, and the rest is just going in and making me emotional without really realizing it? I think that's we might
and I think
go down that
I think
route one
that's
day.
probably the thing to start to pull out here, is that the feed you're seeing, it's not reflecting your choices. It's not necessarily reflecting your values. It's shaping them through this repetition. It's showing you more and more and more stuff around this topic that somehow triggered you, paused you emotionally perhaps, which makes it stronger. But at that moment, it's starting to reinforce it with more and more and more of the same. And if you want proof, as you start to look at a topic and you get this emotional feed, the next time you see the same topic, you will be much more ready to open that topic than you would have been otherwise, because you are now somewhat invested. And the more that goes on, that momentum loop goes round, the greater this reality becomes, this truth becomes, in quotes. So you've got this attention that you've given it, your perception and motivation starts to get driven, and ultimately this might drive different behaviours. And these are a simple set of simple nudges from an engine that's trying to keep you on the screen. And it's doing it because you keep reacting to something that keeps you on the screen, which it reinforces with more of the same, and off you go. But the point here is your perception of a topic is motivated by things you're not necessarily consciously deciding, and it is changing your view.
Right, absolutely. And that is, this is where it kind of gets the worrying bit, which is really what we try and delve into, because that's upstream of pretty much everything that you are thinking about. Yes. Yeah, the attention and doing. But so just to recap, you're not choosing where you're going to go, something someone else is, but that will actually effectively, if you like, maybe being slightly exaggerating, but that'll choose what your life feels like, what you are engaged with, what you do get emotional about, what you do concern yourself with. And all that's been done right at the start, where you had absolutely no idea where you were going with that. And again, we are starting to talk about rabbit holing again, but it's more than that. This is, if you have your world through your mobile phone, which sadly so many people do these days, it's not just a case of wasting huge amounts of time and brain power that could be doing something else. And I know we're going to talk about the actual attention span later, but this could be shaping the way you think about the world. Right.
And that shaping might or might not be something you've chosen consciously to be the case. We've just described a set of mechanics here, which is all built around keeping you on the screen, noticing that you are pausing or interested in a topic by some other indicator that it uses, and then giving you more of it. If it's an emotionally related topic, that might be triggering motivations and behaviours you may not have had before you started its interaction. But who chose this path? Did you choose it? No, we're suggesting that it might not have been you that chose it. It might have actually happened to you. I mean, how many people, and for the listener, be honest with yourself, how frequently did you go into a social media platform and search for a topic? Vice scroll into the platform and then find yourself looking at a topic. The difference there is, for the algorithm, irrelevant. You're on the platform. The difference to you as the user is that in the first case, you searching for a topic, finding the topic, spending time with the topic was your choice. But I suspect the majority of the time, you just open and start scrolling, and therefore the choice is being made for you through a set of indicators that you don't even realize you're giving, and it's reinforcing. And again, we are going to talk about a lot of this stuff later. This is a fundamentally important concept to get right in the way you interact with your information environment. Conscious decision versus unconscious guidance.
Yeah. And it's probably worth mentioning that there is a very big difference between the scrolling that we're talking about. So yeah, just open up my phone and doing, what you and I have done in terms of the research for this, where you are actually searching for stuff Now I get distracted all the time, so there'll be some references. I go into the reference and then I'm reading and go, oh, that's interesting. And I'll go off somewhere entirely different. Now, although that is distracting and probably not the best use of your time.
We'll call that curiosity.
Okay, well, let's call that curiosity. And fascinating stuff there. I mean, this is all fascinating, but that is different because, at least you've got a purpose in mind. And when you've, spent 3 hours trying to write the show notes or something and think, well, I've written some show notes, but they're not for this episode. That's a slightly different issue.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But there is a balance, and there is a point there that, and then we'll come on to talk about how you can take control here, but the deliberate action versus the just letting it happen to you.
Yeah, indeed. All right, let's move on to that, because otherwise we'll be here all afternoon and the listener doesn't have that much time. All right, so first of all, Sean, let's think about what could we describe as some symptoms that the attention engine is driving things for you rather than you consciously driving it. I've got a couple in mind, and then from there, let's do as we said we were going to do, and that is give the listener a couple of ideas about how they can take back control. Introduce some friction in the information system barreling along. Let's go down that path before we start to close. All right, so for me, I wrote down a couple of these before we came to the podcast recording, and this one's definitely true for me. I start something, I have a task in mind, I've opened an app, and then a period of time later, normally measured in tens of minutes, I've completely forgotten why I started this process, and I've been doing, this is the tractor video, I've been watching a tractor video for 20 minutes. That for me is a symptom that I have been guided by my own lack of conscious awareness into something that was absolutely not what I came to do. That would be definitely one for me.
Yep. And I think for me, it's, quite often you go on these things out of either habit or boredom.
Yeah.
So you're going on there, and then suddenly you sort of see something. Oh, and I'm really bad at this for buying stuff.
Your wardrobes are full of clothes.
Well, not even that. But in fact, the other day, actually, I was doing one where I just washed my car. And there is a point there, actually, because I didn't put anything about washing cars or anything like that. But lo and behold, up comes this extendable washing brush for your car. I really needed that. Beforehand, I just washed my car quite perfectly, but suddenly I needed that. And then, of course, I paused on it, and then I get loads and loads of stuff on washing cars. Now, that's probably not the best example in the world, but when you start, you've got no agenda, you're not looking for anything, but suddenly halfway through or even before that, you're thinking, I really need this. And this might be, I need to look at something, or it might be, I need to know more about something that you had no idea about before.
Supplements are my car washing accessories.
Right.
That supplement that's going to sort out my inability to concentrate, for example. All right. On a slightly more concerning level, though, as you scroll through, have you ever noticed how your mood can be affected by what you looked at? Now, some people talk about the dopamine hit and the need for dopamine to be a part of their day. They enjoy it. The cat video you talked about earlier, for example.
Yeah.
I get that. But I think there is something about that we should be tracking, we should be noticing. That I came into the app, maybe I was a bit bored, maybe a bit dull, a bit low in morale. And I started scrolling, and suddenly I became really energized about something. I didn't start energized. Maybe that's a positive thing, gives you motivation to get up, go back to the gym or something. But the other side of that coin is, I came in, I was having a pretty average sort of day, just scroll, and suddenly I'm reading something that I'm enraged about now. I'm really furious about it. Now, again, if that's a topic that you've chosen to go and research, and the enragement is a result of your research, well, so be it. You made a conscious choice to go there, and now you have a view on it. If, however, it's something you've picked up because the attention engine is taking you there because you paused on it, who created that mood? You or the attention engine? That's the point. That's what I want the listener to hear.
Absolutely.
Notice clustering as well. Now, we've talked several times about pausing, clicking, and so on. Try when you're scrolling through, try this when you're at home next time with your device in hand. Scroll through and notice how you scroll. Just try and notice that you scroll in a certain way. I see the next thing that pops up, I pause for a second, and I push my thumb, up comes the next one. I pause for a second, up comes the next one. That is your scrolling behavior. Try and maintain that, just that rhythm, 1, 2, whatever your scrolling process is, and just try to track what it's throwing in front of you. It's trying to find something that will deviate your scrolling pattern, because the deviation is what it's trying to see, because that's a clue that it might be able to find more things to find you on the platform longer. So if you want to try this, scroll, 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 stop at one of your choice,
Yep.
pause,
Yep.
and now watch. 2 or 3 scrolls down, that's going to reappear.
Yeah.
That is something you can watch for and start to control.
And we've both done that as an experiment and deliberately. And so, for the listener out there, do try it, and if you do sort of, you pause on something and then probably 3 or 4 reels or whatever later, it'll come up, pause on that again, and it will just start expanding. And so more and more of what you see will be related to that.
Yeah.
And it'll take you to extremes, but that's for another day. But you can actually watch this in anger. I've actually mentioned this to several people that I know, clever people.
Yeah.
And they've all come back and said, crikey, you're right.
Now, the next one for me is going back to your impulsive buy. The impulse to do something has an emotional quotient. We talked about that earlier in the podcast, about how emotion creates a much bigger response for the algorithm to notice. And if you pause on that thing that's about selling you something, is really going to push hard. You know why? Because they make a great deal of money out of you buying something through the app. So if you are the kind of person that finds themselves buying the car washing accessory or the supplement, which is definitely my one, and you are suddenly triggered by, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, try this. Step out of the app, go to the website of the seller, and or go to the internet and search for other things of the same product. And in my experience, 1 or 2 things happen. You suddenly realize, wait a second, this is one of thousands of things I could have bought. I didn't have to buy this one. And second, it slows you down. It just puts a little bit of friction into the process.
Yeah. And now we're starting to talk about how you effectively take back control, aren't we?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just to finish that one off, I did exactly that and went on Amazon. Other apps are available, and I saw there were dozens of them, and then you start looking at the stars, how many stars they had, the rating, and thinking, I don't want to get that anymore.
Yeah, it's rubbish. Yeah, so I think really what we're saying here, Sean, before we go on to the how do we take back control piece, is there are symptoms of the attention engine driving you around that you should become aware of in your own use, and use those symptoms to notice that it's doing it and then make a decision. Do I care? Yes or no? If no, proceed. If yes, what can we do about it? So let's talk about that. What can we do to add some friction in the system and take back control? So for me, again, having had the chance to go around this topic now for quite a while in preparation for these podcasts, there are a couple of things we can do that are very simple. So one of the things that YouTube does, for example, and it's not the only app that does it, there are many, is the autoplay. You open something, it automatically plays. The video starts rolling. Now, we're inquisitive animals, us humans. The curiosity will keep us on the screen for a bit longer than we probably meant. And this is probably for me the 1982 tractor example. Disable autoplay. Make it so that you have to tell it to start because you are actually interested versus, oh, what's that? Oh, that looks interesting, and now I'm stuck in it. So turn off autoplay.
I think for me, one of the ones you can do is, we call it intentional use, but on the search button, which most of them do have, not all of them, but these apps, but if you think, I'd like to know about stuff, put something in deliberate that you want to think about.
Right.
Because it means that you've already got an interest, so you are in control. But it also means that you're likely to get content that you can be objective about. You might have a worldview, and again, we're not going to get into the future episodes of reinforcing initial biases. Yeah. But at least if you are, again, it's back to the pause. Right, I'm going to actually decide what I'm going to look at, rather than let it decide and then take me down a line.
Yeah, and we mentioned that one before. I think if the feed's feeling strangely repetitive, you're starting to see lots and lots of the same thing, there's a symptom there that you can now, as Sean said, as you just said, Sean, we can start to, hang on a sec, wait, why am I in this particular segment of the information world? Why am I here? Step back, reset through a search, and restart the scrolling if that's what we're going to do. By the way, another quick test you can do, another experiment you can do, is try and confuse the algorithm. search for 5 random topics. In fact, go to a book, open the page at a random page, find a word, put that in the search bar, open the book at another page, put that in the search bar, and keep doing that. It will throw a loop. The algorithm won't know what you're trying to do because it can't find a pattern in that. And you'll find that it starts to slow down whilst it's hunting for the next thing that's going to keep you locked in. By the way, if you do that on more than one app, it really does throw the algorithm out, but I'm going well ahead of myself. We'll come back to that later. Pause. That's the key, is pause.
Absolutely.
Notice the change. We've talked about impulses. I won't repeat that. I think really what I want to say, though, John, to finish off this thing is, if you can start to detect the symptoms and you can start to do tangible things to address the symptoms, like disabling autoplay, pausing, etc., changing apps, then hopefully you're going to start to see that you're introducing some friction in this free-flowing machine that's trying to take you off on a journey, slowing it down. It's not about making the app seem like a bad thing. It's just trying to get a seatbelt on it, trying to give you some safety, slowing it down. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, confuse it. You know, and it makes you feel like you've had a win there.
Yeah.
Mind you, just be aware that you might come up with some absolute random stuff that you see, which is fine. But actually, that's a positive sign, because it means that it is not taking you down a particular route.
All right. So let's wrap up, because I know that this is a topic we could spend hours on. For me, what I want the listener to understand in this first mechanics episode, we're going to talk about other mechanics of the attention world, the information world, in future episodes, is that the attention engine, as we've called it, is sophisticated, but it's myopic. It's absolutely focused on just one thing, making it so that you don't leave. That's all it cares about. And when you realize that, and how it does it, we can talk about another time, you begin to understand that I'm at the whim of an engine, an attention engine, that just wants my attention. It doesn't care about what, it just wants my attention. Yeah. That's all it cares about.
And I think for me, it's worth making or reiterating the point that it doesn't care who you are, doesn't care what your interests are. It's not trying to shape the way you think. It's just trying to keep you engaged.
So, final thought time. So, I want the listener to walk away, as ever with our podcast, Sean, whether it was previously the World of Intelligence or now the Fact and Friction. I want them to walk away with one thing. If you've got this far in the podcast, and by the way, thank you for listening to us talk for this much time, what's the one thing that we want the audience to take away?
For me, it's that this is not inevitable. You do have control if you choose to take it, and just that awareness actually is the first way of getting that control back.
I agree. Attention is the first frontier of our freedom online, a phrase I've read somewhere, which I think is a great way of looking at it. Our attention is the first frontier of freedom online. So we need to guard it. Our time is precious. If you allow the algorithm to take you on a journey that you didn't intend and burns 20, 30, 50 minutes, for which read 2 hours, on supplements, then let it, but know that you're doing it. Everything else, if you can get hold of your time, everything else becomes more manageable. So I'm going to finish with a question for the listener, just to wrap up this podcast, for you to take away as a listener. If you've picked up your Black Mirror this morning, today, with the intent of finding something but didn't get there, but spent an hour doing something else, what stole your attention today? And what would you like to give it to tomorrow? If you've given up attention today, hours of your life, to things that bore no fruit, gave you no sustenance, just nothing positive, what would you like to do with that time tomorrow?
Indeed. And on that note, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. That's it for today's episode of Fact and Friction. Thank you for listening. If you found this useful, follow the podcast for more, or go to our website, lumini.org.
We really would welcome any questions and feedback you might have. And if you'd like to go deeper, you'll find links to the research and the show notes in the episode description.
And as always, stay curious, question the noise, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.